Spencer Thompson, welcome to the Pre-Construction Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Lovely, folks. We're here at Advancing Preconstruction 2026 in Phoenix, Arizona. We've got Spencer here. This episode will be all about civil construction, earthworks in particular. Spencer is lead estimator at Cardinal Civil, Charlotte, North Carolina. Spencer, first of all, thanks for coming on. To give the listeners a bit of context, give us a quick rundown of your background and tell us about Cardinal Civil.
Yeah, sure. So I came up in this industry when I was very young. My mom worked at an asphalt paving company, so kind of been around construction for most of my life. I started, with a $7 an hour job, just filing papers away for her. And through that weird experience, I eventually transitioned into, she taught me kind of like payroll and sage timberline way back in the day. And then it went into job costing. And I was very young at this age. So I learned a lot about the HR side of things and EEO policies and paying taxes and fringes and benefits and all this at a very young age. And then I go off to college and never finished and didn't know what I wanted to do. So I came back out, and that same company needed help. And I landed up coming back and helping her many years ago. And then I transitioned into takeoffs. They said, hey, you want to learn takeoffs? And so that opened another door. And so I learned takeoffs. And then I took another job as just from being a takeoff for asphalt paving work and went into site development. And that's kind of where I've ended up today. So I have this weird experience of seeing everything. I've done project management. I've done estimating. I've filed papers, I've done payroll, I've done job costing, setting it up. So that's where I'm at today. So seeing the full picture of how this industry really works has been very beneficial.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the civil construction world is very happy that that's how it happens, because everybody falls into it. Like the amount of people and guests we have on here, they've got really extraordinary journeys, but we're delighted to have you. So lead estimator now, talk to me about earthwork estimating. What are the biggest pitfalls that you experience and you see out there?
Oh man, some of the biggest pitfalls I see, especially in where we're located in the Carolinas, is you have different soil types and just the lack of geotechnical report information. That comes into play big time. We try to really encourage a lot of our partners, hey, just spend a little bit more money and do a little bit more due diligence, because it could save you millions of dollars on the back end. And the better data you provide us is the better, price we can give you, which also drives schedule and things like that. And then also just productions and a lot of things that self-perform work comes with, which is labor resources, equipment resources, and then fuel burn. Like the way fuel prices are today, we really have to consider a lot of those things when we're bidding jobs. How long do I have to haul 100,000 yards of dirt? A lot of things that people don't consider that really impact the job. So one day we bid the job at, $6 a gallon in diesel fuel. And then, a year later, it goes up to $8. It's like, well, hey man, like what are we supposed to do here in this situation?
Somebody's got to pay for it. Yeah,
that's right. And so these are some of the pitfalls when it comes to earthwork estimating is really trying to consider site conditions. And every site is different. And one job I had many years ago, it was like, we had like 100,000 yards of rock on it. And then, 6 months later, we get a request for a proposal to bid a job that was literally like a quarter of a mile away on the same road. And then you pull it up and you go, this has no rock on it whatsoever. It's all plastic soils. It's like just a disgusting soil site. But had that client never built a job there before, they would have just assumed, oh, this whole place has rock everywhere. But in the Charlotte area, you get a mix of everything. You got quarries on one corner and then you got the lake on the other corner. And so it's just a wild representation of all the soil contents. And it's a lot of fun at the same time, but it's a lot of challenge, very challenging.
Exciting though, because that's what we love. Especially estimating pre-con folks, they want every day to be different. Sure. It sounds as if that's what it's like doing civil construction, earthwork construction in the Carolinas. Do you see that everywhere you work, even in northern Georgia?
Yeah, so I haven't been much jobs in Georgia. South Carolina seems to be a little bit better, but it's still the same issue. The further south you go, it seems to open up a little bit more when you're looking at the data. But, where we're kind of at in the Piedmont region of North Carolina, you're right up next to the mountains, the Appalachians, and then you're really not that far from the coast to get below sea level. You're 3 hours away from the coast and you're 2 hours from the mountains. And so you just get this weird, if you're looking at like soil graphs that they've put together through the government, and you see them all these soil types that are very flat across every state, and then they sandwich all the way into Charlotte, and they wiggle their way through North Carolina, and then they open back up again. And it's the craziest thing, you know?
And it's the biggest, like when we speak to commercial contractors, it's the biggest risk that they see is the civil part of it.
Yeah.
You guys, obviously, you do massive earthworks. I'm sure you help and you subcontract out to, or you're a sub of a commercial construction company. What when you're dealing with them, how important is it that you get in early and you advise them very early on, even on a negotiated or a GMP?
Yes, it's very important. In fact, we really encourage people like, hey, let us help you budget this job, regardless of, we would like for you to use this, but at least as a good partner, we put our best foot forward, is come to us. We have the technology and we have the manpower to where we can pull resources from other offices if we're too busy, to where we can bid the job. We can dig test pits on your job. We can run all these data analytics using certain softwares and just really help you maybe change the design to fit the site. Don't take the site and your design and try to mesh it into the site. Like let's try to work around that a little bit. There might be some really creative ways about how you move the dirt and mitigate the soils where the rock's at. Maybe you don't cut that much there, but it's hard to handle and address all of that if we come to the table later on. Yeah. It's very easy to address a lot of those things if we can get in at what we call like an early design phase or a very budgetary phase.
Would you deal a lot with the clients, the developers directly? Would they come to you specifically for that sort of consultancy to be able to say, listen, I've got a 20 acres down in Charleston or wherever, Wilmington, wherever it is, come and have a look at it. What challenges am I going to face here? Yeah,
so that's actually what happens almost exclusively, unless it's a public bid. So we have a public DOT sector, that does a lot of the public work. Those are different, but most of our private work are relationships that we had where they will come to us with a one-page schematic of a property and say, how much does this cost with a building on it? And we go, well, this isn't really like vertical construction where we just know a roof is a roof and panels are panels, right? I mean, this is a site. Like, what's the dirt like? Yeah. And then they go, well, don't you have historical data on it? And then I say, we have historical data in the area, but this specific property, no. So like, what are you after here? Are you just looking for a basic cut to fill budget? Are you looking for, you want an unclassified where we're kind of like assuming the risk of the in situ material on site? Like, so really just honing in on a lot of those questions on the front end also helps drive what kind of budget you're going to provide.
Yeah. For the estimators and pre-construction professionals listening, obviously they deal with their clients all day and they obviously deal with the sub and the civil side. What advice would you give them, or 3 questions would you encourage them to ask the developer or the sub on the civil side that will help reduce the risk?
Yeah, so I think the first question would be do you have a soils report? I think that's just low-hanging fruit right there. Do you have a soils report, and are you willing to spend a little bit more to get additional due diligence done? Like if you send this out to the earthwork contractor like us, Cardinal Civil Contracting, and we say, hey, we're missing a lot of information here to really help us hone in that number. Are you willing to do that? And I think if you can kind of understand that first, it maybe helps you with some other things down the road. I think maybe the second one would just be just like everything in this world, delays cost money. Like we have hundreds of pieces of equipment that we have to allocate and over 1,000 employees, right? So we sit here and we go, when is this job really going to start? Because if we can actually hone that in time of year, that also helps us understand the soils, right? So there's a big difference in where we're at starting in December and January when it's wet and cold and it's hard to dry soils versus starting in June, July, and August when it's super humid and it's hot. Yeah. Those soils tend to react a lot differently. So really just understanding those 2 things, I think just right off the bat, it would be a big help.
Wow, seasonal. I never thought about it like that. That's interesting. What's the biggest mistakes you see from the GC side?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest mistakes we see is retaining walls. Retaining walls are a big pain point for us. So we build our own retaining walls, and what we see a lot of times is putting like a cut wall really too close to a property line. Like, how do we lay this thing back? Like, what are we going to do? And so we run into that quite often. Not having the proper testing done on the soils to understand what type of wall backfill you need, because we do a lot of reinforced grids with the block walls to where it requires a very specific backfill material. And a lot of places where we're at in North Carolina, they don't have that material. So like in our Raleigh market, you'd have to import that on almost every job. In the Charlotte, it may be there and it may not be there. So like those are some really big cost components, and they typically drive a lot more on the project than what people tend to think. So, and I'll give you an example would be, not only is it a cost impact to have to import dirt, but it also affects your site balance. So, we try to balance these sites because we understand that that's a cost impact on our clients and partners that we don't want them to bear, and we don't necessarily want trucks coming in and out of the job the whole time because it's a lot slower and it slows us down. We want to, deliver the product on time and on schedule. So we try to adjust the site to balance it by adjusting the grades. Well, if I'm having to import 20,000 yards of dirt that I didn't know I was going to have to import, and every change in tenth is 10,000 yards, well, that just changes it 2/10, right? And that was a pretty mild example. I've seen this swing like feet before. That people don't really tend to find out until they're 6 months into the job or 5 months into the job or 2 months into the job. And we do a really good job trying to get out in front of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just the unfortunate nature of the business sometime where, you need proper testing done, what they call a triaxial shear test, to determine the shear strength of the soil to make sure it's good and are suitable. And that test takes a long time. To my knowledge, I think it takes about 3 weeks. It could be less, could be more. I think it's a good average. But you have to go find that dirt and then test it. Well, if that dirt is underneath 20 feet of cut, you have to cut that dirt out before you can test it. So then there has to be a decision made with different options and levers for our clients to pull is, hey, okay, do you want to wait on this? You can, but then you also run the risk waiting 3 more weeks and it doesn't pass.
Yeah.
Or you can go ahead and import it, but just keep in mind how that affects the balance of your job. So there's so many different layers of that. And that's just retaining walls.
Yeah.
We only just talked about retaining walls, Garrett.
What's the other couple of high level ones? Retaining walls. I mean, and it's an interesting one. The cost of retaining walls as well.
Yes.
Is humongous.
It's humongous. Yeah. Yeah, and we tend to do a pretty good job. We always try to stick with a block wall. Cast in place is very expensive, but you don't have the grids. So there's a trade-off. Another thing I think we seem to see is like mitigation of plastic soils. We have a lot of plastics, elastic silts, alluvial soils. So trying to convince, or not even really convince, it's more of just explain the operation behind like how to mitigate that. And so if moisture sensitive soils are a big problem on the job, you really need to consider where you're going to put that, how it impacts your job in 5 to 10 years. And because you may have some shrink, swell, stuff like that can, crack some pavements. You don't want any of that, of course, but you have to really be cognizant of where you put that. And then the last one would be like chemically modifying the soil. So lime stabilization to dry it, or you could use cement stabilization to just, lock it all into place. So trying to present our partners with all of that information up front is very beneficial, because we can start showing exposure and really help them understand like, okay, this option works under these scenarios, but if it's like if-then statements, if this does not work, pull X lever to lime it. If lime does not work, pull X lever to go do this, to haul it off site, right? And trying to present all of that data up front to them to just make good decisions. Maybe they want to allocate those funds in a certain way, maybe a certain time of year when you move the dirt. We talked about that. Maybe you don't need the lime in the summer, maybe you need it in the winter. So when's that job going to go, and how does that impact everything moving the dirt?
I tell you what, who would have thought that dirt can be as complex as
It's very
it is?
complicated.
It's amazing, isn't it? And I can see now where general contractors, when they're taking on a project, they look and they pay a lot of attention to the civil side because of the risk.
Yeah.
Because the other stuff, and I don't want to diminish the other kind of ESA divisions, but they're a little bit more predictable.
Very predictable. And it's not a bad thing. There's a role to play in everyone else. I wish dirt was predictable. Trust me, I wish every day it was predictable. And in some areas of the U.S., it's very predictable. There's a lot of places where you're just going to be in a sandy material. I mean, we're in Phoenix, Arizona right now. What do you think we're digging into? I don't think you're having a lot of different soils out here for a long time. So it can be complicated, but there's great tools that are out there that we try to utilize. We have a lot of experience. And so we really know kind of how to like guide people, hopefully in the right direction, and just make really good decisions. And
and you touched on it there, Spencer, the tools. Obviously ag tech is the big tool.
Sure.
It's been there since I know civil construction. How is it now? Is it innovating? Are they developing it? Have they implemented AI into it in some way? And What's the competition like?
Yeah, so I'll start with the first one, kind of like what you touched on. So AgTech's been a great tool. I mean, I remember the days of digitizing boards. I mean, I don't know if I'm showing my age here, but that was what they were using in the asphalt company to trace curb and stuff back in the day. And then it went to a PDF import. Now they went to CAD, right? And so I was really seeing the program integrate over time. So it's been great. Their CEO, Matthew Desmond, he's a great guy. He's always been very helpful with questions I've asked them. They've taken some of the ideas that we've talked about and I've seen them implement them, which has been really fun to see. So one of the cool things I know that they're doing right now is they're giving us the ability now at the earthwork level to input moisture contents of soils and the blow counts of soils. That was one thing that we worked on together for a while, just talking through the importance of that. And not to their like a fault of theirs, I just don't think anybody had ever explained it to them. Yeah. And the importance of, hey, it would be really great not just to see the different types of soil like you can already do, but let's dive in a little bit more. What if I could see not just the USCS classification of the soil, but I want to know how wet that type of dirt is.
Yeah.
Because that type of dirt wet means something else than this type of dirt that's wet.
Wow.
And this type of dirt wet is different from those two types of dirt. So really being able to do that, and that's actually coming out in their newest version, 1.13, that we were talking about. And I think they showed some of this stuff at Con Expo, which is really exciting. Like that's like next level. I don't think anybody's doing that.
That's unbelievable.
At that detail.
And was that a recommendation from you?
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah.
Very good.
And I may not be the only one. I was probably just the loudest one. So that's probably just the loudest one.
You just said it enough times.
Yeah. And there's a lot of room for, opportunity in the program and in the dirt space with that type of stuff. But again, I mean, it's a big machine. You have tens of thousands probably of users. Yeah. And not everybody operates AgTech at that level, at that detail like we do. So, it's just different. So you're trying to solve a bunch of problems as a tech company. So that's one arena. They've also released their cloud version of the program. I think it's called AgTech Reveal. And so you'll be able to go on there, and that's trying to streamline their process all the way from drone flights. They want to house all the data. So from drone flights all the way into doing the takeoff, like all the way through the process. They're trying to really get control of it, all the data to models, right? And so that wasn't really the case for a long time. So they're slowly starting to integrate more towards the cloud, which is great. So get off the desktop app. And then they are integrating AI. I know you mentioned that. So there's one really cool feature that they've added. So on the public side of things, you typically wouldn't get like an AutoCAD file. And in a lot of sectors of the US, you just won't ever get it in general. They just don't operate that way. So what you can do now is you can actually import the PDF sheets into the program and kind of grab the line work out of it. They call it a vectorization process. And you can tell the program, just kind of like drag it into place, spin it around, and it'll stitch it together for you. And then it's all geolocated into like a Google Earth image. So like, that's really cool.
Wow.
And whereas the desktop app wasn't doing any of that, you had to kind of already be geolocated with the survey coordinates and then export it into Google Earth. But now you're kind of building it into the platform already. Yeah. So all your takeoffs are already going to be kind of like in that KMZ, KML file type with the Google image behind it. So they're doing some really cool things in that arena. Good. They built in Copilot as like a helper in some areas where you can kind of like talk to it and ask it to analyze things and do stuff like that. But AgTech, we talked a lot about the AI because I think one of our concerns with like everybody else is, hey, if you're going to put it in here, just make sure it's accurate. Yeah. We want it 100% accurate. Yeah. Because we don't really want to go into a 90% accuracy thing and trust it. And they've been it seems like very particular about where to use it and where not to use it. Things that we thought it could do, it can't do. Right. So they've been really good at communicating that with us. So
that's interesting. And what about competition? Obviously, AgTech have been around for a long time. Is there we're at Advancing Preconstruction. You see it on the commercial side. There must be, from last year in San Diego, I would probably say there must be at least I would say a good 40% increase. There's now 71 booths in there. Yeah. Like, what's the competition like on the civil side? Yeah,
the civil side is interesting. So are you talking more like as far as earthwork softwares or just in general all softwares?
All softwares.
Yeah, so it's actually very interesting. So we come to these things as we might be the only heavy civil contractor here because we want to participate in these softwares. Because we are really lacking, and we're at a point, I think, in our heavy civil industry where we see all of these things and going to web-based and integration with your takeoff softwares and accounting software is getting integrated, getting control over your data without paying an exorbitant amount of fees, which is very frustrating. We are really pressing, I think, to really demand better and look for better options. And so far, it seems like all the VC funds and companies that are being created are really benefiting and tailoring towards the vertical contractors. But there's a place for the heavy civil world that no one's really diving into too much yet for the self-perform work. You know, we have HCSS and Bid to Win. Those are, and Innate. But Bid to Win and HCSS hold a big market share.
Yeah.
And HCSS was just purchased for $2.4 billion. And who knows what's going to happen with that? You know, they could go one or two ways.
Yeah.
And Bid to Win was bought by Trimble. And so, but we haven't seen much. There's been a shift to the cloud, but we would like to see a shift more towards a web-based platform. We think that's fair, that we deserve that.
It's funny, we're seeing it here in all the sectors. Don't get me wrong, single point solutions is good, but some of the companies in there are trying to do 3 or 4 different things.
Yeah.
With the 2 big players, it's a wonder that there hasn't been an AI focused like startup that's got a few quid and been playing with it and have basically brought it to market. I mean, have you heard anything in the rumblings? Or
I haven't, not for an estimating software, if that's what we're talking about. So that, you know, Edify's doing some great things in the market. There's another smaller company called Bidbo that I'm planning to look into that I've kind of been following, that I think they're doing some great things. But there are great estimating software tools, like, don't get me wrong. But what we're seeing, again, is not for anything that is really tailored to self-perform work. Like, the headaches we deal with at a estimating level is very different than a subcontractor plus markup estimating software. We need to know fuel burn, fuel consumption, fuel prices, labor, property taxes on machines. I mean, there's so much things that go into this, logistics. And then, hey, so now we got all this information. Another step would be like, can we back this into a schedule automatically?
Yeah.
Like, there's things like that there are companies really dabbling in that, but at a very small level.
Yeah.
And they're really focused more on the vertical GC side of things.
Yeah.
And which makes sense. I mean, those are their big clients, and which is why we're here saying, hey, don't forget about us. I mean, there's a lot of us out there that we don't have anything like this.
No, the market's crying out for it.
Yeah, it really is.
And I'm sure there are people working on it. Hopefully next year we'll see a bit of it as well. Your current pre-con tech tool.
Yeah.
What does it look like now? What's your stack look like?
Yeah, sure. So we use Bid to Win for all of our estimating. It's a pretty easy tool, user-friendly to learn. Our earthwork and underground utilities, I mean, we're basically using AgTech, no complaints, pretty gold star standard with them, very reliable. Our OSTs, it seems like there's been some in different offices. There's probably playing around with a lot of different things. Bluebeam is the most common one. Yeah. I think some people use Plan Swift. We don't really have a dedicated OST, it seems like, but we would love to investigate that a little bit more. Yeah. And as far as like an accounting software is, I mean, we're in, I think, Foundation, but we'll be switching to Vista, it sounds like, at the end of the year, which hopefully can integrate a little bit better with what we're trying to do.
For a single point solution, where do you think the civil industry is most weak? Where would you like to see a little bit of innovation, a little bit of capital invested in getting a tool to fix that particular part of the workflow?
Wow, what a great question. I truly believe it's on your estimating software side. Yeah. I think the takeoff tools you have out there, they're pretty decent, and you can't really do, like, as far as the takeoff concerned, the headaches, the opportunities there on the takeoff side is speed. Yeah. There's very accurate programs. In fact, I mean, you could take Bluebeam and another one and measure the exact same thing, get the exact same square footage. Yeah. So it's not that it doesn't give you a bad result. It's all efficiency at that point. So then it comes down to, okay, why is it not efficient, right? So you spend most of your time in your takeoff and you can't get it into your your estimating software. Why is that? That's where I land on the estimating software side, where I think that if there was a web-based multi-user collaboration software for our industry, fully self-perform work that could integrate with our takeoff softwares and then also generate schedules and almost streamlessly export out to a tracking software or an accounting software, I think that would seriously fix some of our largest headaches and have access to our historical data. Like, to have to pay fees to get access to your historical data blows my mind. And that's kind of where we're at in our industry. That's just how it is, man.
Don't get me wrong. The data is important. It's the gold within any construction, commercial or civil. But yeah, being charged for it is crazy.
It's crazy.
That's literally being charged for stuff that's yours.
Yeah, especially when I come in here and I see a lot of these new software companies, and then when I go, wait a second, you're not going to charge me for this certain specific feature, and they go, no, that's just built in. I'm like, okay, all right. So what are we doing here?
Brilliant. Yeah. And then AI, obviously, the big buzzword. It's plastered over every booth that you see in there. Where do you use it in your workflow?
Yeah.
And where do you think it's most advantageous?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing I do is I never rely on it 100%. Like, we're just going to clear the air on that. I don't trust any of it. But I do think that there's definitely an avenue for it in the industry. But I use it more as right now, not necessarily as a takeoff tool. I use it more for data analytics. Like, that's where I'm focused on, and like when I'm using it. And so I love using Microsoft Copilot, because a lot of the data analytics we use are very spreadsheet based. So as long as I can get it in some format that's kind of agreeable with Microsoft Copilot, you can use it to do mass analyzation very quickly. And I'll give you an example of this, which I'm going to maybe throw a little trade secret out there that maybe somebody could do something better with, or maybe create a program for it.
Love it.
So the EIA, which is the Energy Information Administration that the federal government runs, they regulate and monitor the fuel, the price of diesel since like 1993.
Yeah.
And you can go on their website and grab it. So with diesel prices and fuel prices going absolutely crazy, there's almost like an index tied to it that they want to track it at price per barrel and price per gallon. So we need to know these things, because if there's a fuel escalation or a fuel decrease, we need to kind of understand, or at least communicate that with our clients, like, hey, we consume 150,000 gallons of fuel on this one job. You put another dollar on that, who's paying $150,000? That comes out of our pocket at a profit fade. So how can we come to an agreement on this? A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
So what I did was I ran a little experiment, which was very interesting. Was I downloaded the entire spreadsheet since 1993, and I stuck it in Copilot and started playing around and building some agents for it. And I just was giving them some simple tasks. And what I did was just pick some highs and lows and try to consolidate. And I tried to create a projected fuel model of what fuel was going to do over the next 6 months. And then I went a year, and then I went to 5 years. And I was starting to build trends. And some things sometimes would put out garbage, and I had to clean it up, like learn to talk to it better. Yeah. But eventually I got to a really good point where I said, oh, this is actually really interesting. So I was trying to predict off of what gas prices at the end of the day, what fuel prices were going to do based on the historical data. Now, keep in mind that it's kind of hard to replicate wars or anything like that. So trying to keep it as simple as possible was find me the 10 closest years, find me the 10 oddball years, and like, let's just try to make a model off of it. Yeah. And so I was using data for that way, because that becomes more presentable. Yeah. If I can get a chart, a graph, a predictive model, and then you can kind of feed that onto your team and say, hey team, like, this could be what we're in for. Yeah. Let's just watch and see what happens, right? And so...
But also your team, yes, but also your client.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very helpful. Very helpful in all of that. Yes. Yeah. So that's like some simple ways that I'm using it. You know, I haven't really found a good avenue for it yet, and what we do to like do a takeoff for us automatically. There's not really a heavy civil software doing that. In fact, there's a lot of software companies here, when I go up and approach them, they say, what are you doing? And I say, oh, well, I'm a heavy civil contractor. And they go, we don't do civil plans. And I say, why don't you do heavy or civil drawings? They said, because they're horrible. They don't match ever. Every engineer does things differently, whereas the vertical's a little more synergized. With BIM modeling's a little more synergized. Whereas it seems like civil CAD is just, they're all doing things differently across the United States.
And that's the problem. And even with these commercial guys, that's the problem. Everybody does it completely differently.
Completely different.
So off the shelf, having it rigid is quite difficult for a GC to turn around and go, yeah, that's exactly how we do it. And then, change. People don't like change, and adaptation is down.
Yep.
But yeah, I think, listen, it's crying out for a bit of disruption. Listen, we all know from this podcast, Kyle Bond, he says that you're pioneering change in a lagging industry in civil construction. What do you say to that? And do you feel a sense of responsibility for change?
Yeah, that was really kind of Kyle. Kyle's been very helpful throughout this process. I think about 5 years ago that I I started getting really frustrated. The more I got involved with data and workflows and pre-con, trying to like be more efficient and get a team to be way more efficient. Like I started questioning a lot of things, like why do we do things like this? Why have we always done things like this? And it started driving a frustration in me. And then I started doing a lot of research and trying to solve more problems. And I ran into Kyle somehow on social media. We got linked up. And so somebody linked us up. And then I reached out to him and I said, Kyle, like I don't really understand your role in your company. Like, what do you do? And so we hopped on a call and he was super helpful. And he started telling me all these things he was doing. And I was like, oh man, let me share some of the things we've been doing too at my last employer. And so then his eyes got really big and said, holy cow, I didn't know heavy civil was that bad. I thought y'all were better than us. I said, no, we're way worse than you guys, you know? So, as far as a sense of responsibility, I've never really felt that way. I'm just very passionate about it. And I hate to see young people come into this industry and just bang their head against a wall and just say like, why they leave college, they play video games, they have a smartphone, but then they come out and they got this tech and they're like, why do I have to click 7 buttons to do this thing when my cell phone I can swipe right, swipe left, and it just does it.
It's madness. Because you made a statement just on that. You says, show me a gamer and I will show you a good estimator.
Oh yeah. So that was a post made in frustration where I was listening to someone talk about it was another podcast, not you, I promise. They were talking about the frustration with kids and playing video games. Yeah. And I was like, that's an interesting perspective and I understand where they're coming from. But I was a gamer, like I was a desktop gamer. A lot of people don't know that, but, and all the really strong estimators I've encountered in this field have been really into video games at some point in their life and really always asked a lot of questions. Like when you're playing a video game, I take a different approach. When you're playing a video game, you're typically, especially like one that you try to really solve problems, like maybe like a strategy game or something, you're looking for the most efficient ways to maximize something all the time. That's the way your brain's working. So that's kind of how I see it is you show me a person who's really avid into gaming like that. And number one, I know they can stare at a screen for a long time. Yeah. And number two, I bet they're going to sit there and figure out the best way to do something. Yeah,
shortcuts. Yeah.
And so when I started interviewing people more later in my career, I used to start asking that question, which was, hey, do you play video games? Just in conversation. Like, yeah, I play video games. Oh, what video games do you play, right? And so you're getting to learn a lot about somebody and kind of figuring that out.
Well, funny you say that, right? Because I was dealing with another client that was looking into an LMS system, so learn management system, and that we were talking about people's attention span and different things. And they said that the only way that they see it working is by gamifying it, but gamifying it to not just a simple game, a real high level. Yeah. So really gamifying it. And they reckon if they get that right, the learning development of junior estimators, people off the tools, graduates, will be much quicker and much more efficient.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to put it. I don't know how you go about doing that.
Yeah, well, that's the other problem.
But that's a great way. But I think some of the estimating softwares here are really, they kind of make it more like that. It doesn't look the way that it used to look 15, 20 years ago. It's much cleaner, it's sharper. And things don't just look like clunky spreadsheets anymore. No. I mean, these things look like you are actually playing a video game. Yeah. And the way they operate and move around is just it's seamless, man.
Yeah, it's class.
Really good.
Yeah, UI is incredible.
It really is.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Well, listen, I can safely say, Spencer, we could sit here now for another hour talking about it. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. First of all, I want to thank you. Second of all, if there is someone in the commercial construction, in the civil industry, that want to get in touch with you or have a question for you, where's the best place to connect? Yeah, so you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm very active in that community, and that's probably honestly the best way to get a hold of me. Yeah, wonderful. Sure. Thank you. And anybody not following Spencer on LinkedIn, even if you're in commercial construction, he puts on a lot of great content. So go out there, follow. I'll put your LinkedIn URL in the show notes. Yeah. So anybody looking to connect with him, reach out. I'm sure he'd be happy to help. Yeah, thanks, Gareth. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Spencer. Yeah.